to a discussion that we're having today on mental health and COVID-19. I'm John Buckley. I'm the pastor here at Upper Perk Community Church. I have my son Caleb Buckley here with us, who struggles with mental health, as well as his story has been used to help a lot of different folks be able to know how to best navigate this. And Ron Jones is a pastor as well as a counselor. He's been counseling probably hundreds to thousands of people, just helping them through different challenges that they face. So we just wanted to take some time to talk about something that everybody's talking about, and those that are struggling with mental health especially are dealing with repercussions from COVID-19 in a greater way. So Caleb, when you think of COVID-19 and mental health and all that, what do you feel like are some of the reasons that the emotions and the severity of things are heightened in our current situation?
Yeah. Well, I think there's this reality of death that's becoming very real to a lot of people, and this fear of death. And what does death look like? Death is like, if you're struggling with the fear of man, that's something that you can kind of cope with, but the fear of death is so much a greater cost. So I think a lot of people are really facing that, and that's coming to light in their eyes, and they're realizing, oh, this is something I have to deal with. This is something I have to confront. So I think that's obviously going to be a massive fear if people don't know how to deal with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Ron, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I would think I would use the analogy, if you're somebody who struggles, say, with low back pain, right, which I actually do. And so, you move the wrong way, you go to pick up a ball, and all of a sudden your back gets thrown out. All right, it's just like a lifelong struggle. Mm-hmm. But then if you're in an automobile accident, okay, not only are you going to feel the pain from being T-boned, but you already have an existing ailment. So that back pain is going to go off the charts now. And I think with COVID and with the isolation, there are a lot of emotional, relational things that people already were struggling with.
Right.
And now this forced isolation, cutting off from the norm of life, is exacerbating a lot of those things. And now, if there was depression, anxiety, fear, like Caleb was saying as far as death now, but other mental struggles are going off the charts now because of this isolation. Right. So things are being exacerbated.
Absolutely. And I would say another thing, just from the folks that I've worked with, is we're dealing with, and I even tell people that are struggling with mental health, don't watch the news every day.
Yeah.
When you're constantly focused on these daily death tolls and number of people that have it, and that's where your mind is at, that's just going to really even play at a greater degree. And I'm not saying don't ever watch the news, but I just think you really need to navigate how much you do that, set a time frame on it, how much you're on your phone with related to COVID-19. Because again, I think that really heightens and brings out even that greater fear of death and that greater agitation with things on there. So something for us to keep in mind. Now, obviously, there's always resources that are available for people that struggle with mental health, but now some people don't think about those resources. Some people are limited in those resources because of the isolation, to your point. What would you say are some things that folks that are struggling with mental health challenges, what are some things that are resources for them that they could tap into or should be aware of or can help them in our current situation? You want to start that with Ron?
Yeah, one of the things, there are a lot of counselors that are now doing Zoom counseling. And again, if you're looking for a biblical counselor, I know that the Valley Forge Church, they have a counseling center.
Okay.
But they will do online counseling now. I believe CCEF now is offering some online counseling. So don't feel because of the isolation that there aren't resources out there where you can reach out to a counselor and have a Zoom meeting. The other thing, and you kind of already mentioned, I think in-house what you need to do is you need to limit your exposure to all the updates, because whoever gets your mind, and as far as what you allow to come in your mind, as far as messages, that will exacerbate whatever it is that you're going through. And again, we don't want to isolate ourselves and just go in a closet and not know what's going on. But I know even myself, I got to the place where I said, I'm going to tune in once a week to get whatever update once a week. Because as you start tuning in every single day, it can start building undue fears and anxieties. But reaching out to some online counseling, CCEF has a wonderful YouTube channel with dozens of videos, and these are biblical counselors who are talking about things like the COVID and how it's affecting you, depression, anxiety, fear, things of that nature. Just go on there and spend a half an hour and listen to some of these biblical perspectives from biblical counselors. That will help you navigate through this. Last one I would say is podcasts. Truth and Life podcast is a great podcast. Again, done by biblical counselors, and they deal with a lot of the mental health issues, and they bring in doctors, other biblical counselors, and kind of have roundhouse discussions. You can get a lot of good truth from that, the Truth and Life podcast. So those are just a couple of things that you can do right from your home.
Right.
And obviously the podcast and watching the videos won't cost you anything.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think, Caleb?
Just two that I use. One is To Write Love on Her Arms. It's a foundation for prevention of suicide, just mental health, mental illness kind of related foundation where they just have a lot of different resources from that resource. But also on their Instagram page, they're very persistent with just putting just different quotes or just different little sayings, positive messages that are very real. They're very realistic too, so it's helpful to kind of see something and say, okay, that's not just like a dream thought. That's like a real thought that I can go into and take light in. So that's one. Another one that I've used is Scott Erickson. He talks a lot about different mental health issues within the biblical world, and he does just a great job at connecting even how COVID is affecting like the fear and like why our hearts are so afraid and all these different things. So Scott Erickson, you can also find him on Instagram. He has a lot of really just awesome insightful videos on YouTube too. So those are a few things that I've used just to kind of try and refocus my mind.
Yeah.
So.
And I know you've mentioned this to me before, Caleb, but meditation. We think of biblical meditation, focusing on the Word of God. Sometimes we say meditation, we get this Eastern mysticism, but there's actually healthy meditation that can help when you struggle with mental health, right?
Breathing is like probably my most important resource. So that's huge. Just breathing and going into a place where you can focus on something that isn't your anxiety, and it's a place where you can kind of separate yourself a little bit.
Right.
So. Yeah.
And God's given us these natural things like sunlight.
Yeah.
God's given us exercise. And those are two things that, again, in my dealings with folks that struggle with mental health, getting outside, breathing in fresh air, feeling the sun on your face. I realize we're very limited with the isolation, again, has been mentioned. And how do I get out? Because for a lot of you that struggle with mental health, getting with people is a huge tool. Community is a huge tool to help you manage things. So how do you do that? Well, phone calls, obviously, even Zooming with a friend. But a couple things we've done as a family is I've met a guy, grab a cup of coffee, we meet in a parking lot, we're a parking space away, and we talk window to window. Parks, going for walks and things like that. Our deck, we just painted our deck, so we took the grill off and we left chairs up there 6 feet apart. So we've had a couple people up there where we can meet the CDC guidelines. But those kinds of things, be creative on that. A drive-by, pull into somebody's driveway that can give you help and encouragement, and they might be able to just chat with you right from their backyard there, so you can have that human interaction as well. So those would be some other things I think that can really be resources. And again, being a dad to a son that struggles with mental health illness, as a pastor, a body of folks that deals with it, I know a big question I get from people is that love and live with those that struggle with mental health is, what do I do? What are the right things to do? What are the wrong things that I shouldn't do to be able to support folks that are struggling with mental health? And although that's an ongoing thing, I think, again, because things are exacerbated, to find the right things to and not to do is really important, right now. And Caleb, what would you say are some things that have been helpful for you that people have done that can be an encouragement, and what are some things that really can really make things even more difficult for you?
Yeah, just like questions about either like, how's my heart doing? How's my head doing? Like I was just telling my mom the other day, hey, just remind me of my dreams, because I'll forget, I'll get lost in all the anxiety, and reminding me of my dreams is a way for me to refocus and remind me, where I'm at, what my purpose is. And so those things have been really important. Just asking questions, I think, instead of placing demands, has been really important for me too. And being genuine with it, not trying to be manipulative, because that's obviously going to cause some, especially if somebody's aware of that.
Right.
So I think that's really important, and just being aware of being genuine, being caring with your questions, and when you're asking questions, you might be going into a place that you have no idea. You might have no idea what's going on in their head, and that's okay. Like a lot of people don't. So just be aware of that when you're asking that question, and genuineness is a pretty important thing too when you're in those sort of situations. So being aware of that, and just making sure you're not placing demands and asking questions instead of placing demands.
Right.
Because
Caleb and I just had a great talk the other day, and one of the things I mentioned from way back when I first found out he was struggling with this is I'm a fixer. So I remember one of the things I said to him was, I just want to know what I can do to help you get through this. And he said, Dad, it's not a matter of me getting through this. There's not an end to this. There's a how do I manage this as a part of my life. And that was huge for me to hear and to understand. And especially when Caleb's in a better frame of mind, I try to ask questions then that can help navigate me on how I can interact when he's not in such a good place in his head during those times. So communication, I think, is really key on that. What about you, Ron? What would you say?
Yeah, along with what Caleb is saying, I think asking those questions are very important. I would also say going to the person who is struggling and asking, one of the key questions I think you need to ask is, what do you need from me? What do you need me to do? How often do you want me to check in with you?
Yeah.
And working with a couple one time where the teenager was exasperated, my mom just doesn't care and she thinks this is all in my head, and mom retorted back, every time I come to you, you say you're fine. So it's like, well, you don't even care, but I come to you and you push me away, right? Because they did not establish healthy boundaries.
Right.
And so I told him, what would you like your mom to do?
Yeah.
How often would you like your mom to check in? Mom, check in 3 times a week. Okay, good enough. Put it in your cell phone. Now, what does that check-in look like?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Do you want her to ask you questions? Do you want her to just, you tell me. And so they set up parameters.
Good.
So a lot of times what happens, as you say, Pastor John, a lot of times if you're in a parent situation, you want to fix things. And you can't turn that off.
Yeah.
And so our default as parents is going to be, well, you okay? Are you okay? Can I get you something?
Yeah.
Well, why is your door closed? Well, why are you playing that music? That sounds really sad. Like, what's going on? And the person's like you're just exasperating things, right? So set some healthy boundaries of how you want me to check in, how often you want me to check in. I think that'll go a long way, especially when you're living under the same roof, to let the person know, look, I love you and I care for you, but I want to love you the way you need to be loved.
Right. And I think that brings up a good point, because I think there's times, I know there's times that everybody needs alone time. And with houses being more crowded and people not going out to work maybe or other things, that can really heighten things. So, but I know, again, as a dad, I can be concerned. I can potentially battle with, my son's door's closed and it's 2:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
Is he okay on that? And so I think it's important that people realize, though, we need that separation. I need separation for everybody.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid all the time with that. Realize that things are different.
Yeah.
But you gotta know your child too, and that's where it can communicate. Hey, this is where my fears are, son or daughter, or husband or wife or whatever it might be. How can I best navigate that? So again, I think a lot of that goes back to communication, talking with each other on that. So.
Yeah, and I think too, just to dovetail on that a little bit, I think a lot of times the person who's struggling, and Caleb, you can either affirm or deny this, they don't want to feel like a case study.
Right.
They just want to look, I'm normal, right? Don't look at me through what my struggle is. And so if you're constantly, how are you? It's like, can we just have a normal conversation sometimes about whatever?
Yeah.
Like, so, give the person permission to be normal, just to come in and sit down and be like, man, I don't feel like doing anything. Wait, you don't feel like doing anything? Well, are you okay? Are you giving up? And it's like, no, I just don't feel like doing anything. Yeah. Just like you don't feel like doing anything sometimes. Yeah. Don't view the person through the mental struggle that they're having.
Right.
They're normal. They're made in the image of God. They're a human being just like you. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Oh, yeah. No, that's massive, because the more, if it's excessive, it's overdrawn, then you're just like, am I okay? I don't know.
Yeah. Second guessing.
Like COVID-19. My head feels a little warm. I must be sick.
Right,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, to that point, again, a tendency that you can have being a fixer. And I think especially with COVID-19, it's very easy to, for churches even, to focus all their messages on COVID-19, all those things. I just saw that John Piper has a book out, Christ in COVID-19. God bless him that he could put it out that great. I ordered a copy, I have it, I haven't read it yet. But as a church, we've tried to continue to preach through our Matthew series and have that as an outlet. And yet we try to have some encouraging words on that. But I think the same thing can happen with mental health, even in a heightened way with COVID-19 is, hey son, here's an article to read. Hey daughter, here's a website to go to, and constantly be bombarding them with things about mental health. You can make them aware of it, but then step back. They can run into it. And why don't you just share just a verse that's been an encouragement to you, or share with them something God's doing in your life. It doesn't always have to be about mental health, even as that relates to the scriptures on things.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Yep.
Now, there's mental health challenges, and I think I love that you used in your message this morning how in Psalms you dealt with mental health, the difference between somebody starving and somebody who's just hungry. And a big difference between somebody who's legitimately starving and somebody who's hungry. There's people that battle mental health, and then there's people that are paralyzed by mental health. There's depression, and then there's deep depression. At what point, and especially again now knowing some of the resources may be more limited, when should I seek help outside of looking at the scriptures, getting feedback? When do I need to get that professional help to guide me through that? What would you say, Ron?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of times people will come into the office and they're trying to distinguish between, is this just an everyday normal occurrence that everybody kind of has? Like, I'm just hungry, right? It's lunchtime, right? I'm hungry now, right? You're supposed to have food here. You didn't have it today, but we forgive you, right? We forgive you. Okay. Or I am in a very detrimental place physically, and I'm on the point of starvation, muscles being consumed by my body now, right? Those are two different things. Yeah. Well, same thing can happen in our thought life. And I usually draw a picture on the board of this beautiful ocean. You can picture it, this beautiful ocean. And then I draw a little canoe, and then I give them some options. I say, are you in the canoe, and the waves are torrent, and you're holding on to the side, but you're in the canoe? Or are you in the ocean? And you're still being tossed, but you have a life jacket on, right? Third option, are you in the ocean with no life jacket and you're going down taking water and your arms are flailing, right? Where are you emotionally? Which one of those people would say, yeah, that's who I am? And it's amazing because a lot of times they can answer that right away. They go, that's me. If you are in the water with no life jacket, you need to get professional help. Because what it means is you are dealing with this emotion, but you're not moving through. You're not doing life. You're not, life has stopped, okay? You're not even worried about responsibilities, hygiene, you don't care anymore. You're going under. You need to get professional help at that time. And sometimes meds can be a stopgap to help. I mean, we can do a whole conversation just on that.
Sure, absolutely.
But I tell people you have to know where you are emotionally, and don't be ashamed of where you are emotionally.
Right.
Where you are emotionally is where you are emotionally.
Right.
It's like, again, I use the physical analogy. If somebody is in a car accident and the guy, he broke both legs, he shouldn't feel ashamed because he can't get out the car and help his kids that are buckled in the back get out. His legs are broken. That's not his fault, right? Yeah. So I use those pictures, and again, if you're drowning, you're taking on water, you need more help. Yeah. You need more help.
Yeah.
Caleb, what would you? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you're having those thoughts, of like, you know what, maybe I should be. I know that like I've slipped into this. Oh well, I think it's okay for me to start considering like exit, considering other options. I think that as soon as you're having those sort of suicidal thoughts, or you're starting to have thoughts of where you're starting to lose touch with reality, that's also something that's like, okay, you need help. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like if things that are important to you aren't at all, and it's not just a matter of you maturing, then like that's probably, you probably need some sort of help. You don't really want to have to wait until you're drowning.
Right, exactly.
You want to at least have a hand to hold while you have a life vest on. Yeah. Something bringing you back into the boat.
Right.
So as soon as that life vest is on, you're in the water. like, all right, now's the time,
Things
you know?
change,
Yeah.
You just mentioned this, but when I've dealt with people, if you have a plan of how you're going to take your life and you're starting to develop that plan, you need to get some help. And if you're in a state, the word I like to use, where you feel debilitated. I can't get out of bed. Not I want to get out of bed, and I think I can get out of bed. I can't get out of bed. I don't want to eat. I don't want to live. And it's a debilitating, obsessive. You need to get some help on that. And we as a church, just in general, provide a community resource sheet, which we'll attach along with this video. You can tap into. But I'll tell you, even during these times, Access Services has a crisis hotline, a 1-800 number. And you can call that. They'll send 2 professionals that understand, again, CDC guidelines. Because you can feel legitimately debilitated enough with this COVID on top of it, where you don't feel like you're even safe to go to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
So these people will actually come to your home, taking all the precautions to be able to assess what might be the best choices for you and your family to make during that time. So, but there are times to do that, and I love what Ron said. This is not something to be shamed about.
Yeah.
This isn't something that you should feel like you're done something wrong in. It's if somebody's been raped by somebody else, they didn't do anything wrong. They are the victim, and you're the victim of this mental health. Now, you can make choices within that. A victim of rape needs to make choices to be able to get health and healing and resources so that they can become victors in what's been perpetrated on them. And the same with mental health. There's tools that can use that you can navigate through this, so you don't have to constantly live in the state of feeling like you need to take your life with things. But
That's, if I could just dovetail on that
Absolutely.
real quick, because I think, particularly in our circles of Christians in the church, when you start using the term mental health, all of a sudden you get different reactions, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, whoa, wait a minute, right? Like, you need to trust Jesus more, brother. Just pray more, memorize more verses. And for me, and again, I know that's the label we use, but if I could change the label, think about mental. What is mental? Mental, we're talking about our thoughts.
yeah,
How many of us struggle at one time or another with bad thinking? Thoughts and the healthiness of your thinking.
yeah,
I don't care who you are. We all struggle with that.
right,
So I think as soon as you put mental health label on it, there's this dichotomy. That's them, not me.
right.
Have you ever been cut off going down the road and all of a sudden you speed up like a maniac trying to get as close as you can to the guy who cut you off? Your mental health in that moment is not good.
Absolutely.
Your thinking is not good.
Right.
You're thinking irrational. You're speeding. You got kids in the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That person would never consider that in that moment their mental health is not good.
Correct. Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think just understanding, going back to the shame thing, if your thinking is bad, wrong, to the point where now, and you use the word debilitating, I like that word. I use the word often paralyzed.
That's a good one.
I'm just paralyzed.
Yeah.
I can't move. I can't go forward. There's no shame in that at all.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
all of us struggle with wrong thinking at times in our lives.
Right.
So just wanted to put that a little bit there.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys and what you're saying, and we've talked about a lot of stuff, and literally we could talk for hours, and our whole goal was to have our Mental Health Sunday, to have second hour breakout times as a church. This was a way at least to provide some resources, and everything we talk about, I can think of 6 or 7 things we could add on to that and go along the way. But I do want to let you know in the fall, we will be having another Mental Health Sunday. We're also going to be having a Saturday workshop, so we'll make sure we get those dates to you as they get formalized on our website at UPCC Online and other things. So please stay tuned for those. Before we wrap things up, you guys have any final thoughts for either people that are struggling with this, people that are helping, that just have kind of come to your mind as a result of our discussion that we've had today, either of you?
I would just say, as far as some of the things that you can do, again, Pastor John referenced the message. I encourage you to go back and listen to the message, because to me, it's a big deal to me that the largest book of the Bible, the book of Psalms, is a book that is riddled with emotional up and downs. Think about that. The largest book, it's the Jewish prayer and song book that God in His sovereignty chose to put in the collection of 66 books which make up His Word.
Yep.
Why?
Yeah.
And the message that we preached on looking at those Psalms, the two that we looked at, and looking at the roller coaster of emotions that David had.
Yeah.
Is it because God knows the human experience? Of course. God made us in his image, and he knows the struggles that we're going to have in our thinking based on what's going on in our lives.
Yeah.
And so I would say to you, whether you are struggling or whether you are trying to be supportive, take time and read through the Psalms.
Amen.
And if you don't feel like reading through the Psalms, thank God for technology. Listen to it on your audio Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But listen to the emotions, listen to the struggles, the real struggles, and listen for the hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all throughout there's this line of hope. Another thing I like to draw on the board, I draw like a zigzag line. I said, do you feel this way emotionally? All over the place. And people are like, yeah, I can deal with that. And I'll draw that like in red.
Yeah.
Then I'll get a black marker and I'll draw a straight line right through it. I said, that's hope.
Right.
That's all you're looking for. All of these zigzags, that's going to be up and down. That may not go away, but where's that steady line of hope? And one of the things you see throughout Scripture, particularly in the book of Psalms, is the steadfastness love of God.
Amen. Amen.
It's there. It ain't going anywhere.
Right.
So I would encourage you, immerse yourself in the book of Psalms.
Amen. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts here?
Yeah, just a couple things. One thing, just a quote that I think is something good to consider. Levi the poet said, "What ifs are deafening questions," and I think that that's very true. And I think it's important for us to, when we get caught in those what ifs, remember to think of what about now. That let's refocus our brains and try and remember, what ifs can be deafening questions, but right now let's focus on where we're at. So just something that's really kind of helped me and reminded me. Also, that's a resource that I've used is Levi the Poet for music. I know that it's important for us to kind of get out of our head with music. So he has a song called "It's All Worth Living For," and it just is great to remind me of the simplicities, the beauties, and then to just keep looking for the new mercies every day, and be reminded that there's beauty still there. There's still life. We're still here. And God is still working in our lives, and he's still giving us these different gifts of beauty, these different gifts of friendship or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So just a couple of things to keep in mind as we kind of close this out and maintain and remember the resources that we are giving out. These are people that want to help you. We want to help you, and this is why we're here. We want to help you, and that's a beautiful thing. So whenever that shame is there, whenever that heaviness is there, just remember that we're here to help you, and so are these resources. This is what they do for a living. They love this, and this is what they've been made for. So just remember that's a beautiful thing too. So yeah, those are just a couple of thoughts. But
I'll never forget one guy that told me that really struggled, especially in the middle of the night with his mental health. He said, I used to love every morning when I would start to see just the beginnings of sunrise, that the sun came up again. Yeah. And just the hope in that, and what are the things you find hope in, and look for those throughout the day with things. So thank you again so much for joining us. Again, if we can help at all, please reach out to us through our website, upcconline.org. There's an email, info@UPCC. You might have a question for Ron or Caleb and I can make sure that I pass that info along to them so that they can reach out to you. We're glad that we're able to have this opportunity to share with you, and that would be the key in all this is there is hope. God loves you. God has a plan for you. Don't give up. Reach out. There's lots of people out there that care about you and want to help you along the way. So thank you and God bless.